Let's go to Mike Gill now, joining us from 97.3 ESPN down the shore. You can follow him on X and on YouTube at Mike Gill Show. What's going on, Mike? Welcome to the show, brother. How you doing on this Wednesday post-Memorial Day?
Well, I've already had the refrigerator man at my house to repair my fridge that the fan crapped out on, and yep, I'm ready to go.
That's bad news. That's a great day, though. It's beautiful.
When we had so on Sundays we do a show on the porch. You know, we're watching the Phillies game, and I handed a beer to one of the guys who was watching the game with me, and he said, "This beer is warm." I said, "No, it's not." He said, "Yes, it is." And that moment I said, "Uh-oh, I might have a problem with my fridge." And I looked at the temperature, a balmy 67 degrees inside the fridge.
Uh-oh.
Oh,
yeah,
man.
that's nice.
Oh, no.
Now, is that a secondary fridge for the porch,
No.
or is that the main fridge?
This is the main.
All right, that's a bigger problem.
This is now it's fixed. It's the guy came this morning and fixed it, but for 2 days, 67 degrees, probably 3 days, I guess. I don't know when it crapped out.
So in other words, the beer is no good now, and the food is no longer good either.
Probably.
No, the beer will regenerate.
The beer will be fine.
Yeah.
There's some Memorial Day weekend leftovers that are no longer.
Might be a little flat, but you'll drink it. That's how it works. Good
Those
stuff.
are Kevin Petullo first world problems, though, Mike.
Yeah.
Nobody's. Yeah.
Well,
but you're right. Everything. I've been dealing with trees at my house, and there's always something.
We had a bunch of trees chopped down a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah. I had to get a new thermostat. It's always something.
Always something. I will tell you, I don't need to see anybody else to come down the shore ever again. That's for sure.
Oh, I don't know how you do it, by the way.
I stayed off the island for the most part. The problem was there was not beach weather. So the off-island spots were populated because people were looking for stuff to do because it wasn't quite warm enough for the beach, but it was nice enough that you wanted to kind of be outside with like a hoodie on. So a lot of the breweries were packed. You know, it was like, and then by the way, if you ever took a snap for the Eagles, you were down here. I mean, they were everywhere down here, and people were taking pictures and videos. I mean, Cooper DeJean, I think, hit every single night spot you could find. From Margate.
Come on, Cooper.
He did. He was down at the Deauville Inn, too. I saw it.
He was at the Deauville. I heard he was at the place in Margate. He was at the Ocean Drive. I mean, he went from Margate to Stone Harbor, back to Sea Isle. I mean, Strathmere. He was everywhere. I think he was with Sidney Brown, from what I understand. Jordan Mailata was down here. He had dinner at a place that I go to a lot. It's right up the street from my house. I heard he was on the beach in Ocean City. I heard he was at Playland. I heard he was at the Crab Trap. I mean, everybody saw Mailata. Big Dom was up at Playland and Preps Pizza. And I mean, it was a party down here for the world champs.
It's hard for Jordan to hide.
Yeah.
When you're that big, but they deserve it. Good, have a little vacation. I'm with you, though. But, they're young men. When I was a young man, I had no problem, making that trek down the shore. It didn't bother me. Now, you couldn't pay me to go on there.
I'm fascinated by the amount of people who sit in that traffic every single weekend. And I said, look, it's nice down here. I love living down this area. It's very quiet in the off season, but I could not for the life of me figure out what is so great to come other than going to the beach. If you're a beach person, it's packed. There's only like 3 restaurants to choose from.
You gotta wait. You gotta wait 3 hours to have a meal anywhere.
I can't imagine that being fun every weekend.
Yeah, I'm with you.
And this is my
Mike. You're talking to somebody that's been a weekend shore goer my entire life on this earth.
I know. This is my polite
you
way
will
of saying
change, Zander. You're still young. You will change, Zander. It will wear on you to the point when you hit a certain point. You go.
I'm more like Mike. Like I'd like to live down. I would live down here. I don't need.
Well, that's different, obviously.
Yeah, I like
if you live down there, then it becomes, as I imagine, Mike, is like you're begging for the off season to come.
Yeah, right. Yeah. The off season is nice down here. Yeah, it's
Labor Day is our favorite day.
Yeah. And that's understandable. But And then you got all the knuckleheads, all the stuff in Seaside Heights and Wildwood and all that. And it's like, it's too much. But we are going to be back on the field today, Mike Gill. Well, the Eagles were actually on the field yesterday. First practice open to reporters. I don't want to overstate it. It's OTAs, but what are the first things Mike Gill wants to hear about when the Eagles hit the field?
So I've always had a my take on OTAs. Everybody's like, it's nothing. You can't get anything. I look at it a little differently. I do think now this doesn't mean someone's going to make the team or be a contributor. Maybe not, but I do feel like if you coach, if you're a good coach anyway, and I think you should always be alert to something. So if there's somebody that you didn't have any expectations for or didn't have any anticipation that would be a part of your team, and he catches your eye, now you say, hey, when we get to July training camp, I want to make sure I pay closer attention to this guy. I had no anticipation for him. So you can catch a coach's eye or get on the radar more by standing out and doing something, extra hustle. Maybe you caught the ball better than they thought they could. Maybe your routes were crisper than they thought, to where they say, hey, this is a guy I now want to pay closer attention to. Are guys winning, depth chart positions here? Probably not. I would imagine that that's not what's happening here. I don't think, but if you're one of these guys, Adoree Jackson and Kaylee Ringo, this is the first step of this battle of who's going to get those reps as the outside corner. I think those are positions where the OTAs probably help more than, say, Tyler Steen trying to win the right guard spot. I guess it's pretty hard to win a right guard spot in OTA, no pads. But for those skill position guys who were showing athleticism and speed and agility and break on the ball, this is probably the first step in those battles for stuff like that. So, yeah, I mean, don't get carried away with this kind of stuff, but I definitely think that there's an opportunity to open eyes here. And listen, let's see what everybody looks like when they get back from the buffet lines. You're right. Who showed up?
Yeah, I'm going to have a bigger eye on Cooper DeJean.
Yeah, he's going to be sweating out booze. Are you kidding me?
Yeah. Come on, man. Had a little success as a rookie. You got to keep it going.
Who had a little too much fun down the shore, this Memorial Day weekend. Yeah, who's, coming back. The last time they played a game was February, right? So we're now into June almost. So it's removed. So, you had some time to either put some on or get some off. Let's see what everybody looks like.
Yeah, I'm not worried about Cooper. If you saw, people finally get to, I told people, go watch his basketball highlights. Now everybody saw the Eagles put up, they had that little basketball day at the Palestra where, Saquon threw it off the backboard to Cooper. That dude is an outrageous athlete.
This isn't the first time that a couple Eagles have come down the shore and had some fun.
Oh,
so no one's sitting here being disparaging of Cooper.
But
he was one guy that was being, one of my interns works at the Deauville. He's like, Cooper DeJean was in there. It was awesome. Blah, blah, blah. So, you see these random people that, see these people, but I don't know what kind of condition he was in.
It's easier to get wrecked as an offensive lineman, though. Like guys like AJ and Slay, they don't drink, man. Period.
Yeah.
So, I'm not saying, Cooper's a very young man. Most young men have a cocktail or two. It's not going to be a problem. But I feel that
trend is changing, that the younger generation is not drinking this much.
Yeah. Well, you have
for us old heads.
Yeah. Yeah, we did, certainly. But you're right. And guys like, people don't believe it. Like AJ doesn't drink. Slay doesn't.
AJ Brown, yeah.
Slay claims he's never had a drink in his life. I don't know how that's possible. But you look at their, body of work and it speaks for itself. So there's something to it. But
and this is why, it's so hard to repeat. This is why what the Chiefs have done is so, commendable, is that getting everybody, 53 guys, to all have a similar mindset of wanting to do this again. And that's what takes, a great team into a, memorable run. Can the Eagles start this memorable run? And it all starts by getting back and getting refocused for practices and OTAs like this.
No doubt. But Mike, is the league after the Eagles? All right. Now they're trying to take away, they're trying to work on the void year. In a span of 10 days, Mike, Roger Goodell loses out on getting rid of the pushing in football. And now he has turned his sights to void years on contracts, which, I know a lot of teams use it, but nobody uses it to the tune of the Philadelphia Eagles, close to $400 million in dead money. Is the league coming after the birds, Mike Gill?
It would seem like it, right? All these leagues are trying, the NBA did this with their CBA where they wanted to get rid of the super teams, right? So they created this way that you basically can't pay 3 superstars to be on the roster together. So whoever they were targeting in that, it was a way for them to try to do what you're now seeing in the NBA is the kind of, these super teams are going away, and it's, based more on kind of drafting right and cultivating your own roster. The NFL has always been a parity-driven league, and I guess they have now sensed that the Eagles are one of the teams who do it the best, have figured out a way to kind of circumvent that system. So sure, I mean, if you are successful, teams are either going to try to duplicate you, or you're going to be looked at under the microscope a little bit more of what are you doing that is causing a kind of like an alternate 1985, if you will, from Back to the Future, where you're doing something that is allowing you to cream rise to the top here when we want everybody kind of in the middle. So this would be a probably pretty big hit to a team like the Eagles, right?
Yeah, from the standpoint of they'd have to change the way they do business, but I think they're prepared for it. They've been preparing for this for years. That's one of those things where like this came to the forefront because Roger spoke about, the upcoming CBA negotiations, which are going to open up with the 18-game schedule, what the owners want accomplished. And Jason Fitzgerald wrote about it and tried to explain what's going on. This has been going on for a long time. Less financially sound owners can't afford to use it as much as the bigger owners, and they have an issue with it. In other words, it didn't pop up. Like I think Eagles fans think it popped up. Like this has been going on behind the scenes for years. I wrote about voidable years 6 years ago. I said, I'm stunned they haven't done something about this.
The great irony of all of this is the notion of they don't like us and we don't care. And yet all the Eagles fans do is complain that the league is coming after us. So, they came after us with the tush push. Now they're coming after us with the voidable years. Hey, they don't like us. We don't care. It's like, hey, you want to try to stop us from doing this? Who gives a crap? No, the Eagles fans do care that they're coming after them. But this certainly would be something.
I get it from the standpoint of it's natural. This is not the type of thing that interests most fans. So they're not paying attention to it. And all of a sudden, if it pops up and they see it, and it pops up when the Eagles are the Super Bowl champions, like it's been going on for years and years and years, but it pops up in their purview and they think, oh, they're going after the Eagles.
Yeah.
The victim mentality has to stop. But Mike's point is true. And we're not advocating for it, but the NFL wants more parity. Yes, that's what they do. That's the whole idea of the draft. The bad teams get the top picks. That's the whole idea of the schedule, the first place schedule versus the fourth place schedule. If you're at the top, they're trying to drag you back to the middle. And if you're at the bottom, they're trying to lift you up. So everybody's relevant. That's their goal. And that's their goal with the Kansas City Chiefs, the New England Patriots.
The NFL wouldn't consider doing a lottery, correct? I know a lot of people have been kind of championing this. Hey, the NFL needs a lottery.
No. There's no need for it. Their system works from the standpoint. I'm not going to say nobody tanks because there's teams that lose.
Well,
maybe
heck,
the last.
If the Giants would have lost their last game, maybe
Yeah.
they would have got the quarterback.
And
they wanted.
there are teams. The Eagles did it. The one year where they benched everybody.
It's you're going to have teams strategically lose a game here or there.
Yes,
but when you
but
have
you're talking about a
outwardly-
game. You're not
right, when
talking
you
about a
have
whole
teams
season.
throwing half, in the NBA, teams from February on are just like not interested in winning. And by the way, they have no benefit to win a game. Sometimes that is a problem where the benefit of winning when it hurts your franchise to win a game, that becomes a problem.
Well, what I like about I don't like much about the modern NBA, but what I like is what you said earlier, Mike. It's no longer a super team league. Look at the teams still playing. Jalen Brunson I think he was a second round pick.
He was the 33rd pick in the draft, by the way. I just did this exercise on my show. The Sixers could have drafted him at 26. Instead, they drafted Landry Shamet. They could have drafted Shai Gilgeous-Alexander at 10. He was the 11th pick.
Yeah, exactly. Well, he's the MVP. He's the 11th pick. You have these guys who developed, and now, player development, which I always say, you and I had a lot of arguments about Sam Hinkie. I didn't agree with it. You kind of were on board with it. I'm like, to me, the biggest problem with the Sixers is they just expect to draft a good player, and that's it. Like, there's no elevation. There's no, and I think even it's obvious in football. It's not as obvious, but it's getting more obvious in basketball, where you can actually develop players. Jalen Brunson being the best example, as you mentioned, second round pick. And now he's the best closer in the NBA, or he's at least he's in the conversation. You can do it. You can do it, and teams have done it, and I think that's a good thing. But you're still going to have the tanking issue because it's too ingrained in the culture of the NBA.
There's the theory of if I get a higher pick, I have a better, there's more talent pool to choose from, and I'm going to find the most talented player at the top end of the draft, as opposed to Tyrese Halliburton was the 12th pick. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander was the 11th pick. Jalen Brunson was the 33rd pick. You look at the teams right now that are in now, Oklahoma City is an example of a team that went the Hinkie route, but it worked for them because they hit on all their picks and they developed their picks. The Sixers, who weren't novel in their idea, they just branded it and did not hit on a lot of their picks and had bizarre stuff happen to some of their picks. But
they branded it, and they branded it, and they did it longer than most.
Well, they went longer because they had some injury issues. Joel not playing for 2 years, Ben Simmons not playing because he breaks his foot. I mean, that.
Speaking of, I think you have Keith Pompey on your show every once in a while. If Keith is right, the Sixers could have had Halliburton for Ben Simmons.
Yeah.
They were like, no, we don't want that guy.
Dude, that was a trade that had been floated out there. Halliburton, Buddy Hield, and one other guy for Ben Simmons. And
that wasn't enough.
Yeah.
That wasn't
enough. At that time, he was trying to go for James Harden. And I think, most people at that time, Halliburton was kind of like, I don't really know much about this guy. Go for James Harden. So I think a lot of people were kind of on board that the Sixers ended up with Harden. Hindsight being what it is, Halliburton, younger. He's only 25 years old, has surpassed, what you thought he was going to be. But
I don't blame the fans for that, but I do blame the GM because he's the one who's got to know that stuff.
But the difference in football is the one player doesn't change your franchise like it does in basketball. Like if you get the number 1 overall pick and it's not a quarterback, drafted a defensive end. We've seen that over the years where you get this great defensive end, Myles Garrett or J.J. Watt, and it doesn't change the complexion of your team enough to win a title. So the benefit of losing purposely without getting a quarterback in return is just not there. Where in basketball, to lose purposely and land a player, that guy can take
But
you
at
from
least that's what, at least, as you mentioned, 11, 12, 33. These are the big time players still playing. It's showcasing.
No, Anthony
you
Edwards
can,
was the first overall pick, and his team
yeah.
is still alive. Yeah.
No, obviously, first overall picks is the odds are better. But even if you go back to Steph Curry, what was he, 7, 8, somewhere
I think he
down,
was 6.
somewhere down a little bit. It showcases that. And Jason, even if you go back to the Markelle Fultz year, I mean, Jason Tatum,
He was the 3rd pick, Tatum.
yeah.
And so was Jalen Brown, by the way. So look, there is no blueprint of how to build a team. I mean, you're getting them from the 3rd pick, the 1st pick, the 11th pick, the 12th pick, the 16th pick. Heck, Tyrese Maxey was the 21st pick. He's turned out to be a really good player. But in the NFL,
And the kid from Duke showed some signs before he got hurt.
Yeah, he was the 16th pick, Jeremy
Yeah.
Kane. But if you look at the NFL, Patrick Mahomes was not the first overall pick. How many times are we seeing where there's a guy, Jalen Hurts was a 2nd round pick? So,
well, if you ask in a modern era, if you ask most people who the best quarterback, they're going to go Tom Brady, who's 199.
Yeah.
And if they don't go Tom Brady, they might go Joe Montana, who was a 3rd round pick.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing in the NFL, there is no exact science of, hey, this guy, I think Caleb Williams being the first overall pick, some people, I think if you look at last year, I don't even know that he was the best quarterback of the rookie class last year. I think, Bo Nix might have been the guy that people were talking about more by the end of the year. We'll see what happens in year number 2, but there's just not enough benefit. So to go back to Xander's question about this voidable year stuff, a lot of these teams are doing this to kind of circumvent the cap and keep guys and, kick the can down the road. You might not be able to do that as much, which will put a higher importance on scouting departments and, finding these diamonds in the rough. And as John said, develop them. And that's one of the things the Eagles do so well, particularly with the offensive line. And when you develop your offensive line and you have this really good offensive line, it helps the whole system grow because you can block up front.
Yeah, that's what people should be copying with the Eagles. I've said it ad nauseum: offensive line, offensive line, offensive line. Doesn't matter how many skill position players you have. If you can't block anybody, as you pointed out, Mike, you got to block first.
Yeah.
Or those guys can't do their job.
And the theory of you're a bad team, you lose on purpose, particularly to get a quarterback. And now you have this quarterback and then nobody can block for him. So you're on the hamster wheel of, well, now we found our quarterback, but we don't even know if he can play because nobody can block for him. It's like if you're really bad, you need to start with, hey, we need to get a left tackle. We need to get a right tackle. We need to get the interior of the offensive line. Now we have that. We can draft a quarterback at number 15 or 17 or 26 because that guy's going to be better because he has people in front of him who can block. So we don't have to invest as much in the number 1 overall pick who won't have anybody to block for him.
But the second part, and where the Eagles deserve credit with the voidable year stuff, it's not just being willing to do it. I pointed this out to Zander. If you screw it up and you extend the wrong players and they turn out to fail due to evaluation, you're up, creek. They hit
because
they hit on all these evaluations.
Yeah, the Eagles went after Jordan Mailata a couple of years ago and paid him before he had one good year, and then they reached out to him and extended him. And a buddy of mine was texting me like, "Oh, the guy's only had one good year. I think that's an overpay, blah, blah, blah." It's like, yeah, that's what the Eagles do. They are gambling that this guy's 1 year will become 4 years. And instead of paying him at the end of the 3rd year, top level left tackle money, they're betting on getting him ahead of the market. And now Jordan Mailata is a modestly paid left tackle compared to the output that he does, that he brings. And they've done this to a lot of players where they approach them early and pay them so that now they're in the middle of the pack when really they're they deserve to be at the top of the pack.
Well, look at Jalen Hurts. He was the top paid player in the history of football for, I believe, 6 days. And now he's out of the top 10 in the quarterback contract conversation. That's how quickly it rolls.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
I think the NFL, to the conversation of the voidable years, needs to start looking at these quarterback salaries and thinking, do we have a problem where, the Giants were kind of held hostage by the fact that they needed a quarterback, so they paid Daniel Jones. There's no way in hell he deserved the money that he got, but that's what the market says. I don't know, like, what
yeah,
they
but
can
you don't
do.
have to do that. I blame that on the Giants. You don't have to do that. And that, granted, it's a difficult conversation when you have, to me, the better examples are the Derek Carrs of the world, who just retired, and the Kirk Cousins of the world, who are good quarterbacks, but you're not going to win anything with them. But they're good. What compared to their peers, they're well above average, and you got to pay them exorbitant money. But that's an organizational mistake. If you're stuck in that situation, is it better to go with a young guy, take your bullets, build up the rest of the team, and then maybe get a quarterback down the road? So I think the Eagles have, and development again, Jalen Hurts was a second round pick. They developed him. He was not ready to play. You saw his rookie season when he got in. And he slowly has gotten better and better and better. So development's a big part of it as well. And I love the Kevin O'Connell quote. I bring it up because it was so good. And he just said, when it comes to young quarterbacks, everybody wants to work with him, blah, blah, blah. Quarterbacks love him. He was a quarterback. And he said organizations fail young quarterbacks more than young quarterbacks fail organizations, which I agree with. I mean, these guys don't get any help in a lot of these situations. And you never know what they would have become. Like David
look at Sam
Carr.
Darnold. Look at Sam Darnold.
Yeah. Well, Sam's one of the reasons O'Connell's got the reputation he has.
Right.
But,
but he bounces around from the Jets, a defensive head coach, Carolina. He finally goes to San Francisco kind of as an apprentice for a year under Shanahan.
That helped him, by the way, with Shanahan. That helped him.
Yeah. But this happens to a lot of these guys where you get drafted in the wrong situation. You look at Caleb Williams last year. I mean, a rudderless ship led by a defensive-minded guy fires our offensive coordinator in the middle of the season and then turns it over. So I'm really intrigued. I was not a big Caleb Williams guy coming out of the draft. I do acknowledge he's, a hell of a talent. But obviously, what turns you off is like, here's a guy who comes in and thinks he should have ownership of the team wherever he gets drafted. Like, are you kidding me? You're not even good enough to win 5 games. But I am intrigued to see what happens now that he's with an offensive-minded guy and how much Ben Johnson can get out of Caleb Williams. But at no point should any player come into the league with such demands to think that you're above, because if you don't have the right coaching, you're not above.
Yeah. Well, he wanted to work with O'Connell. He wanted to find a way to get there. And it's interesting. I wonder, he would never admit it publicly, but I wonder if that was reciprocal, if he wanted to work with him, because of some of the issues you just brought up. But yeah, I mean, what's bringing up quarterbacks, obviously Jalen's entrenched, but how quickly do you hear that Tanner McKee was sharper in OTA practice? Do you expect to hear that today, Mike Gill?
I was going to say, don't we hear that every year? The backup quarterback looked like he was sharper out there. It's been like it feels like it's been like that for a long, long time, where it's always the backup quarterback looks really good. And look, McKee, by the way, is a big dude. So yeah, he physically, he has a more physical, imposing look than Jalen Hurts does. But I watched him play. I was at the game last year when he played the Giants, had a really good first half. They were running the same play over and over again, just a little tight end out to the flat. I mean, they ran it ad nauseum. I'm not all that excited about seeing Tanner McKee have to play an elongated. He's the kind of guy that, like, if somebody made you an offer and you can
Well,
almost
that's
like
the
AJ
hope.
Feely them.
Yeah, exactly. AJ Feely. That's the hope. He plays
Yep.
well in the preseason and how he can spin them off. Maybe not for a second round pick, although he'll ask.
Do you think he would do that this year, though, or would he wait another year?
An overpay, I think he'd do it because you have Dorian Thompson.
Second rounder seems very unrealistic.
I think, yeah. But if Kellen Moore wakes up, the thing about Kellen Moore's quarterback room, Tyler Shuck, Spencer Rattler, and I forget the third guy, but he's the third guy. If he wakes up one day and says, my God, this is awful, and he liked Tanner McKee, and I don't even know if he liked Tanner McKee, how much, but you never know. He was here and say, hey, I'll give you a third round pick.
You have to.
You do it? I would.
I would definitely. You don't know internally, though, how much the Eagles say, look, if Jalen Hurts missed 6 to 8 weeks, if Tanner McKee can keep us afloat, do they think that, or do they just look at him as, hey, if we can get something for this guy, we got to do it? Because if Hurts goes down, our season's over.
Well, I think the mentality is your season's over if it's like early and it's he's gone for the season. In your scenario, if you have to play a game or two, I think it was telling that even they kept playing Kenny Pickett even with broken ribs, which is why I'm a little surprised that they didn't go the more veteran routes. But they're trying to go cheap. Is basically what it comes down to. Which is
somewhat surprising because they have paid backup quarterbacks. They drafted Jalen Hurts. It seems like an organization that is always, I remember when they drafted Jalen Hurts, on my show the next day, I'm thinking, listen, do I love the pick? Does it make sense? Maybe not. But this is a team that values the backup quarterback higher than they do the starting safety almost. Like they won a Super Bowl with the backup quarterback. They paid Chase Daniels, got paid a lot of money. They have always invested in that position. So it is.
But the thing is, though, you're right, but backup quarterbacks make a lot of money now, veteran backup quarterbacks. And they're in a position that, they signed 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 free agents this year. Not one of them got 2 years. All 1-year deals because they got $390 million in dead money in Boyd years. And they got extensions coming. They already got Cam done. They got extensions coming for Jalen Carter, Nolan Smith. 2 years down the road, it's going to be Quinyon Cooper. The whole offseason's been about getting that financial house in order. That includes quarterback.
I'll tell you what, though, this season is very interesting to see how they follow up that Super Bowl. The following offseason, they do have a lot of cap space on the way, and they have a lot of draft picks still. So you're in like a season of you're supposed to kind of be in between, I guess, following the Super Bowl, losing a lot, but yet could still be finding yourself at the top of the heap. If they can get through this season, the following offseason, they have some money. They have some cap coming up here that they can rebuild and get young. It's pretty amazing how they have managed to do this.
Yeah, well, but for them, it's not really the cap; it's the cash. Their whole philosophy is.
Well, they could be a player in free agency in the next offseason if they choose to. Is what I mean by having the cap. They could go out and get a heavy hitter. Hey, we didn't like what we got from Jalix Hunt. Josh Uche, Aziz. Now there's an edge rusher we really want to pay. They can go out and do that next offseason.
Yeah, they can, and they will. But they're going to have to make some difficult decisions with good players, and they already have. They have this year with Slay, and probably a year early, then a year late, that type of thing with his age. CJ, that was strictly money. There's no way they were bidding for Milton Williams. They knew that. Josh Sweat, no way. All good players, but they've maxed them. They've leveraged themselves to where they got to scale it back. for the next round of good players. That the problem is they have so many good players. You know, that and you can't keep them all. When you're a bad team, you don't have to worry about this type of stuff. So it is a good thing. As it is when Mike Gill Show joins us. Mike Gill at Mike Gill Show on X, YouTube as well. Make sure you follow his YouTube page. 97.3 down the shore. If you're making that trek through that traffic, tune in, drive time. And 97.5, then you got to come up. You're like a salmon. Do you do that? Do you do that in the studio, 97.5, or are you doing that?
No, I drive up there, but
yeah,
I chose Sundays so that I don't have to hit any traffic.
There you go. So you got to swim up and then swim back down.
You don't get Sundays on in the summer traffic from the shore?
Well, I leave so early in the morning. My shift starts at 9, so no one's leaving to go home quite yet. And then when I come home, there's no one coming from Philly back, so I
there's no one going
home.
back. Right.
All right. Very savvy. There's a savvy.
Yeah, 9 to noon. You can find me on 97.5 in Philly, and then Monday through Friday, 2 to 6, one click away on 97.3.
And Wednesday, you can find him here. Most Wednesdays when doesn't have something else to do, but we appreciate
going to Prague
it.
Soon.
Prague. Oh, yeah. Nice. Wow.
You're a traveling man, Mike Gill.
Well, I got all these people in the chat that still remember that I went to Thailand. I got to make them forget.
Oh, they've never forgotten that. Yeah, they didn't forget that.
It was the greatest trip I ever went on. I would go again in a heartbeat, but we're going to Prague and Portugal coming up here. I don't know the dates yet.
I always, every once in a while I see Prague in a movie. It looks like a nice city. Yeah. I think you'll enjoy it.
Mike, I had no idea the amount of stigmas there were around visiting Thailand until you went, and my chat made me aware of some of what they were. So we've been hearing them for a little bit now.
Yep. So I will find a new location that people can remember me by.
They will find a way to troll it. Trolls are going to troll.
Yep. Mike, thank you for joining in today, brother. We'll talk to you again next week. Thank you, man.
Thanks, bud.
See you.
All right, there he is. Mike Gill joining us here on Birds 365. Great interview there with Mike Gill. Getting ready for OTAs. A little basketball talk there as well. Johnny Mack, good overall interview with Mike Gill as we get ready to kick off OTAs today for the Philadelphia. Well, not kick them off, but kick off what you're going to be at. They kicked off yesterday. So, but good time of the year for the Eagles, and not great weather, but they're going to be out there.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see if they're indoors or outdoors. Boy, if you got to cram 90 players, won't be 90. A couple guys are obviously hurt, but if you got to cram all those players and it is voluntary, some guys might have the day off, blah, blah, blah. But there's going to be a lot of players. Hopefully they can do it outside, but we'll see. Stay tuned.
Yeah, that's indoor. That's going to be tough if it does happen like that. But we will see how it happens. We'll take a commercial break now. When we come back, we'll have Brandon Lee Goutman in hour number 2 coming up around 9:20, and a couple more OTA questions for Johnny Mack. So we appreciate each and every one of you guys for being here. If we have any more super chats, I'll get them. All good. I have no more right now. Appreciate each and every one of you. Hit that like button. We'll be right back on Birds 365.